My CEO husband, Michael, pretended to be poor and let me support him for 6 years, all to experience true love. The day his childhood friend returned, she publicly exposed him as a billionaire CEO, pointing at me and calling me a gold digger. Michael, she only loves your money. Why else would her fraternal twins suddenly need a large sum for surgery right after she found out who you are? My shock and bewilderment, in my husband's eyes, became the panic of a lie exposed. That night, my fraternal twins were tied behind a speeding speedboat, bobbing up and down in the dark waves. My husband, full of disdain, sneered, "Don't you love money? How many laps your children can endure depends on how well you satisfy Tiffany." Tiffany, with a vicious look, pushed the accelerator to the maximum. "Bitch. That'll teach you to usurp a position that isn't yours." I watched in horror as my children were violently slammed against the reefs by the towering waves, their blood instantly dyeing the entire sea red. Heartbroken, I knelt on the deck, pleading, "Please, save my children. They're only 5 years old." "Enough. Those are just silicone dummies behind the speedboat. Your greedy face and this act you're putting on are disgusting. Please, call the maritime rescue team. My children can still be saved." Holding my dying twins in my arms, I begged him desperately. Michael frowned in disgust and kicked me away. "Get away from me. You're covered in blood and seawater. It's sickening." I fell onto the deck, tightly shielding the children in my arms, looking at him in disbelief. Was this still the same man who used to stay up all night caring for me when I had a cold? Tiffany coyly snuggled into his arms, her slender fingers tracing circles on his chest. "Michael, look how realistic her acting is. Isn't the fake blood effects good?" She took out her phone and played a video. The screen showed the process of making silicone dolls, from modeling to coloring, every detail lifelike. "I heard she specifically ordered these props from Hollywood," Tiffany said with a triumphant smile, "to extort money from you. She'd even use her own children to put on a show. What a great mother, wouldn't you say?" I stared intently at the screen. On the left wrist of the male doll in the video, there was a prominent red mole. I quickly looked down at Leo in my arms. His tiny wrist was clean. Nothing there. "Look, Michael," I shrieked, raising Leo's wrist. "The dummy in the video has a mole, but our son doesn't." "Michael, look closely. This is our son, not some prop." Michael's expression shifted, but quickly returned to indifference. He walked over and slapped me hard across the face. "Enough. How long are you going to keep this act up?" The stinging pain made my face swell instantly, but I ignored it, simply clutching my children tightly. "I'm not acting." Tiffany stepped forward, interrupting, and threw a wad of cash at my face. "It's all about money, isn't it? Here's your payment. Now take the money and get out. Don't be an eyesore here." Bills scattered across the floor, some fluttering onto Lily's face. I looked at the children gradually stiffening in my arms, then at the blood-stained money. A guttural laugh escaped my throat. As I laughed, tears mixed with blood streamed from my eyes. "Married for 6 years. I thought I had married for love." I remembered his nervousness the first time he held my hand, and his clumsiness cooking for me in our small apartment. I remembered the tenderness in his eyes when he held our newborn twins. Back then, he would get anxious for hours if I so much as frowned. He would stay by my bedside all night when I was sick, and he would willingly get up to comfort the children when they cried. But now, all I saw on his face was disdain and indifference. Lily's small hand slipped from my clothes, no longer having the strength to hold on. Leo's breathing grew fainter, and the blood on his small face had congealed into a dark red. Holding them, I silently apologized in my heart. "I'm sorry. Mama couldn't protect you. Mama was too naive, trusting the wrong person." The sea breeze swept by, taking with it the children's last warmth. I kept watch alone in the hospital morgue, and overnight, my temples turned white, on the cold gurney in the hospital morgue. Leo and Lily lay side by side. I reached out to touch their faces, but my fingers trembled in midair. Unable to descend, the forensic report was out. It clearly stated that the children died from drowning and severe impact. I held the report, tears dripping onto the paper. This was proof, confirming that my children were truly dead, proving they weren't silicone dummies. Footsteps sounded from behind me. Michael walked in with 2 bodyguards, his gaze expressionlessly sweeping over the children on the gurney, with red-rimmed eyes. I stood up and handed him the forensic report. "Do you see? The report states clearly, Leo and Lily are really." Michael took the report, glanced at it expressionlessly, then, in front of me, he tore it to shreds. I froze. "Michael, what are you doing?" Michael pulled a compatibility report from his pocket and slapped it onto my face. I don't have time for your theatrics. Tiffany's acute leukemia has relapsed, and she needs a bone marrow transplant. Your bone marrow is a perfect match. I looked at him in disbelief. You want me to donate bone marrow to her? Why should I save her? She's the one who killed Lily and Leo. Michael's eyes instantly turned sinister, and he grabbed my throat. Since you insist those silicone dolls are Lily and Leo, then if you want your children to have a proper burial, you'd better cooperate. His fingers tightened, and I could barely breathe. What do you mean? See you in the operating room tomorrow at a.m. Michael released me, adjusted his cuff. Otherwise, I'll have these props thrown into the incinerator. I collapsed to the ground, coughing violently. Michael frowned, his tone softening as he spoke. After the surgery, I'll give you some money. You can use it to buy Lily and Leo some treats. That should be enough, right? With that, he turned and left. I knelt on the floor, looking at the shredded forensic report. I suddenly remembered what he had said 6 years ago, when we first got married. Grace, my greatest wish in this life is to protect you and our children. His eyes had been so tender then. I crawled over, picking up the shredded papers piece by piece. I wanted to put them back together, just as I longed to piece together my broken home, but it was impossible to put them back together. Nothing could be reassembled. A nurse came over and whispered, Ms. Grace, about the children's funeral arrangements. I raised my head, my eyes devoid of tears. Just wait. My voice was impossibly hoarse, until after my surgery, if I could make it off that operating table alive. The next morning, my legs were weak, barely able to stand, but 2 bodyguards mercilessly dragged me towards the operating room. Right next door was Tiffany's top-tier sterile room. The walls were thin, and I could clearly hear Tiffany's coy voice. Michael, do I look good today? Michael chuckled indulgently. Tiffany is the most beautiful then. When I'm better, can we go to the Maldives for our honeymoon? Yes, anywhere you want. Their laughter pierced through the wall, crushing my heart. I closed my eyes, trying hard not to listen. But then a nurse suddenly walked in with my phone. Ms. Grace, someone sent you a message. The screen lit up, showing a photo sent by Tiffany. In the photo, she was wearing Lily's keepsake locket. The caption simply read, "Thank you for your gift." My hands trembled violently. That was Lily's last possession. Her most cherished keepsake locket. Now it was around the neck of her killer. No, I tried to grab the phone, but the restraints held me tight. The patient's unstable, increased the anesthesia dosage. More drugs were injected into my body, and my consciousness began to blur. But that photo was deeply seared into my mind, impossible to erase. After the surgery, I was left in a general ward at the end of the corridor. There was no caregiver, no companion, not even a visitor. I was running a high fever and shaking. Sweat soaked through my hospital gown. I tried to press the call button, but found my arm wouldn't lift. Late that night, Michael pushed the door open. A document in his hand. Sign this. He tossed the document onto the nightstand, without a single word of concern. I turned my head with difficulty. The document read, "Voluntary donation, no liability, just in case," he said coldly, his face expressionless. "In case you change your mind later and claim we forced you. And in case Tiffany has any complications, I will pursue legal action." I stared at him in astonishment, trying to speak but unable to utter a sound. Michael grew impatient, roughly grabbed my hand, forcibly dipped it in the red ink pad, and pressed my fingerprint onto the document. He collected the document with satisfaction. Before leaving, Michael suddenly stopped and turned to look at me. "Grace, I know you feel wronged, but I promise you, I'll visit you and the children every Saturday from now on. We can go to the park together, eat together. Just like the happy family we used to be." He spoke so genuinely, his tone as gentle as when he proposed. "Just cooperate with me, and I guarantee you and the children the best life." I stared at him blankly, a wave of absurdity washing over me. He let Tiffany kill my children, and now he wanted to play happy family with me? I suddenly laughed, tears streaming down my face. "Michael, just go." I closed my eyes. "I'm tired." Michael's expression instantly turned cold. "You don't know what's good for you." The door shut heavily, once he was gone. I trembling picked up the phone from the nightstand and dialed my lawyer's number. "I want a divorce, please. Draft a divorce agreement for me. Soon." The lawyer's voice came through again, full of confusion. "Ms. Grace, the civil registry system shows your marital status is unmarried, holding 2 urns." I pushed open my front door and froze. Everything in the living room was gone. Even the family photo Lily had drawn on the wall had been torn down. In the empty room, only Michael and Tiffany stood before the floor-to-ceiling window. "Tear down this wall and make it an open-plan kitchen," Tiffany said, pointing towards the kitchen. "I don't like enclosed spaces," Michael nodded. "Okay, whatever you want." Tiffany turned around, a flicker of triumph in her eyes when she saw me. She walked over, her gaze falling on the urns in my arms. "These are your props too, aren't they?" I took a step back. "But don't get too carried away with your act." Tiffany smiled sweetly. "Playing pretend and bringing these bad omens home. How unlucky." Michael frowned. "Grace, take those things away." I clutched the urns tightly. "This is my home." "Your home?" Tiffany burst out laughing. "Grace, get it straight. This entire building belongs to Michael. What did you think that tiny bit of rent you paid amounted to?" My head buzzed. For the past 6 years, I had paid rent on time every month, believing this was our rented home. It turned out, it had been his all along. "I specifically chose this one." Tiffany walked up to me. "Because this place holds your memories, and I'm going to erase them, little by little." She suddenly reached out and snatched the 2 urns from my arms. "Give them back." I lunged forward, trying to retrieve them. Tiffany deliberately stepped back, stumbled, and fell directly to the floor. The 2 urns also fell, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The lids came loose, and some of the ashes spilled out. "Lily." "Leo." I crawled over, trying to collect the ashes. Michael, however, kicked me in the chest, making me curl up in pain on the floor. Michael helped Tiffany up, checking anxiously for her injuries. "Where did you fall? Does it hurt?" Tiffany leaned into his embrace, pouting. "Michael, I just wanted to see what was inside the boxes." "And she pushed me." Michael soothed her, then looked at me with cold eyes. "I didn't push her." I struggled to explain. Michael ignored me completely. He picked up the urns from the floor and walked directly to the window. I wanted to stop him, but the pain pinned me to the floor. Unable to move, he opened the window and emptied all the ashes from the urns. "I told you, stop playing these petty games." Michael clapped his hands together. "As punishment, the weekly playdate I promised you with the children will be changed to once a month." I knelt on the floor, my mouth open, trying to cry, but my eyes were so dry they ached, and not a single tear would fall. Tiffany lifted her head from Michael's embrace. "Michael, I'm hungry." "I'll order takeout." "No. I want your cooking," Tiffany whined. "But you don't know how to cook." Michael looked at me. "Grace, go cook." I slowly stood up, mechanically walking towards the kitchen. Tiffany followed behind. "I want pot roast, glazed pork, and steamed eggs." I opened the refrigerator. It was empty. "There are no ingredients." My voice was hoarse. "Then go buy some," Tiffany said matter-of-factly. "Hurry up. I'm waiting to eat." I turned to leave, but Michael called out. "Grace." I looked back at him. "After I get married, you can still stay around." His tone was mild, like he was offering charity. "I'm used to your cooking." I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but found I couldn't speak. I squatted down, carefully gathering what little ashes I could still see on the floor, and tucked them close to me. After doing all this, I calmly walked to the bedroom. I took out the ring, the unmarried status certificate from the civil registry, and the 2 death certificates I had painstakingly reassembled. I placed them all on the bed, then I turned and left, walking directly towards a black sedan parked at the street corner. The car door opened, and an old man looked at me silently. "My dear, finished playing? Ready to come home now?" On the 3rd day of Grace's disappearance, Michael's life was in complete disarray. Breakfast was a cold sandwich from takeout, the bread as hard as a rock. He took 1 bite and threw it into the trash. There was a wrinkle in his shirt that he couldn't iron out. He irritably tore off his tie. Suddenly remembering how Grace used to meticulously straighten his tie before he left the house, the small apartment, which he had once considered a disgrace, now seemed not so unbearable after all. Returning to the emptied home, 3 items lay on the nightstand: a cheap silver ring, an unmarried status certificate, and 2 death certificates clumsily taped back together with clear tape. He sneered, picking up the death certificate. "Grace, your acting addiction is getting worse. You're even daring to falsify official documents now." He casually swept them into the drawer, believing it was just my new trick to play hard to get. "Michael, what are you staring at?" Tiffany coyly linked her arm through his, complaining that the new chef's cooking was terrible. Michael absent-mindedly responded, then compulsively dialed Grace's number. "The number you have dialed is out of service." The The cold, automated voice came through, and he froze. An inexplicable dread swept over him. Michael, listen to me. Tiffany stomped her foot in annoyance, deliberately pushing the antique vase nearby onto the floor. The vase shattered into pieces, and she looked at him triumphantly. See? Now you'll pay attention to me, won't you? Yet, another image flashed in Michael's mind. Grace, after accidentally breaking a bowl, would anxiously check if he was startled, then carefully begin picking up the pieces. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Her panicked expression back then was in stark contrast to the woman before him now. For the first time, he felt a strong aversion to Tiffany's arrogance. Clean this up. After instructing his subordinates, Michael suppressed his irritation and turned to leave. He sent someone to investigate at the hospital, wanting to get evidence of Grace falsifying death certificates to completely expose her lies, but the reply made him frown. The lead surgeon responsible for the bone marrow transplant had resigned urgently due to family reasons the day after the surgery, and had already moved abroad with his family, whereabouts unknown. This small anomaly made Michael's heart uneasy, returning home late at night. Michael heard Tiffany whispering on the phone, "That stupid woman's bone marrow. How could I possibly use it? It's disgusting. I had the doctors get rid of it long ago." Yes, the leukemia was fake. Of course, a few doses of special medication could simulate the symptoms. And that fool Michael actually believed it. She laughed triumphantly, her voice filled with malice. As for those little bastards, ha! It's better they're dead. Saves them from being an eyesore. Who told them to be born to that bitch? I just want her to experience what it's like to lose everything. Michael violently pushed the door open. Tiffany turned back in terror, her phone dropping to the floor. His face was expressionless, devoid of anger or rage. There was only a deathly cold silence. He walked closer, step by step, his voice terrifyingly calm. "What did you just say?" Michael gently caressed Tiffany's cheek. "Tiffany, I didn't hear a single word you just said." Panic flashed in Tiffany's eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. "Michael, I was just joking with a friend. You know how women sometimes say crazy things." Michael nodded, pulling her into his embrace. "Of course I believe you." Tiffany sighed in relief, holding him tightly, but she didn't know that Michael had already condemned her to death in his heart. Late that night, Tiffany was sleeping soundly. Michael quietly got up and called a private investigator. "Recover all deleted data from Tiffany's phone, Mr. Michael. That will take some time. I'm only giving you 6 hours." Michael hung up the phone and walked to his study. The death certificate, taped together with clear tape, lay quietly in the drawer. He meticulously examined every detail. The official seal was real, the paper quality was real, even the watermark was real. Michael's hands began to tremble. Just then, his phone rang. "Mr. Michael, the data recovery is complete. Miss Indeed has multiple call records involving falsifying medical records, bribing doctors." Michael closed his eyes. "Continue." "There's also detailed information about her overseas, including multiple abortions leading to infertility, before returning to the country. She meticulously planned this takeover scheme. Her target was your assets." "Mr. Michael, there's one more piece of news. Grace is the granddaughter of Henry, head of Vance." Michael slumped into his chair. Vance, a business empire that even he had to look up to for 6 years. He had thought he was testing Grace. Michael remembered the heartache in Grace's eyes whenever she saw him wearing cheap clothes. He remembered her always buying the cheapest groceries to save money. He remembered when she gave birth. He could only afford to send her to the most basic hospital because he had no money. She had never complained once. Even on the day he revealed his identity, the shock in her eyes wasn't about money. It was from the pain of being deceived. "Mr. Michael, are you still there?" Michael mechanically hung up the phone. Tiffany had woken up at some point and was standing at the study door. She saw the documents in Michael's hand, and her face instantly turned pale. "Michael, what are you looking into?" Tiffany tried to approach, but Michael's gaze froze her in place. "How much longer are you going to keep up this act?" Tears welled up in Tiffany's eyes. "Michael, I don't know what you're talking about. I love you. I gave up everything abroad for you, gave up everything." Michael stood up. "You were abandoned and nowhere else to go. So you came back looking for a sucker like me, didn't you?" Tiffany's tears flowed even more profusely. "No, Michael, let me explain. Lily and Leo, they really died, didn't they?" Tiffany's crying stopped abruptly. She opened her mouth, wanting to argue, but found herself speechless. Michael looked at the woman, an unprecedented disgust rising in his heart. "From today on, your life belongs to me." Tiffany recoiled in terror. Michael, what are you going to do? Michael didn't answer, simply dialed his bodyguards. Lock her up. I lay in bed at Vance. Grandpa holding my hand, his eyes filled with heartache. My dear, it's all over now. I nodded, but found I could no longer cry. I chose the best spot on the hillside of Vance for Lily and Leo. Their tombstone was made of the finest white marble, inscribed only with their names in a single sentence. Mommy's eternal darlings. It rained on the day of the funeral. I wore a black dress and personally placed the 2 small urns into the burial plot. Grandpa's hand rested on my shoulder, and my childhood friend Ethan held an umbrella over me. Just as the pastor began the eulogy, a loud crashing sound echoed from outside the estate. Michael broke through all the security and stormed in. He was soaked through, his suit covered in mud, and his eyes bloodshot, when he saw the 2 small tombstones. The wildness on his face instantly froze. No, this isn't real. He walked closer, step by step. This is your new trick again, isn't it? Grace, tell me. I didn't look at him, simply bent down to wipe the rain from the tombstone with my handkerchief. My movements were light, as if caressing my children's faces. You're not welcome here. Get out. I don't believe it. They're not dead. Michael completely broke down, screaming as he lunged towards the tombstones. Ethan immediately stepped forward, shielding me, and said coldly to the bodyguards, "Escort him out." 2 bodyguards instantly restrained the violently struggling Michael. Pressing him down in the mud, he thrashed futilely like a fish out of water, uttering bestial wails. Grace, let me see. Just let me see them. I slowly stood up, took something from my pocket, and threw it in front of him. It was a small knitted tiger, a little crooked. Lily had stayed up for several nights, saying it was a birthday gift for Daddy. Is your life worth anything now? I looked down at him. Can your life bring back my children? Michael, you're not even fit to tie their shoes. Michael looked at the small knitted tiger. A strange sound escaped his throat, and then he collapsed unconscious. That night, Michael received an urgent express delivery. Inside were 2 DNA test results. He had ordered samples to be taken from the blood-stained clothes I had discarded. Clear writing, cold data. It clearly confirmed that the 2 children he had called silicone props were, in fact, his own flesh and blood. Michael's last shred of hope completely crumbled. He sat in the empty mansion, the lights off. Only the light from his phone screen illuminated his twisted face. He played videos of the children over and over again. Lily danced in front of the camera, and Leo sweetly called out Daddy. The laughter in the videos and the deathly silence in reality formed the cruelest contrast. He laughed, his laughter growing louder, eventually turning into mournful wails. He suddenly stood up, his eyes blazing with furious hatred, and drove directly to the suburban villa where Tiffany was held. Tiffany was leisurely painting her nails, believing Michael was just upset and would come back to coddle her in a few days. When she saw Michael kick the door open, she feigned victimhood and went to greet him. Michael, you finally came to see me. I missed you so much. Michael said nothing, simply grabbed her hair and slammed her face onto the coffee table. He held his phone to her ear, turning up the volume of the children's video to maximum. Do you hear that? That's the sound you destroyed. Tiffany screamed in terror. Michael ignored her, dragging Tiffany like a dead dog to the private dock by the sea. A speedboat was docked there. He took out the thick rope he had prepared and tied Tiffany tightly to the stern of the speedboat. Tiffany was terrified, begging for mercy. Michael, I was wrong. I love you. You can't do this to me. Michael sneered, returning her own words from before. Bitch, that'll teach you to usurp a position that isn't yours. He started the engine and pushed the accelerator to the maximum. Tiffany's body was violently dragged and slammed through the waves. Her screams were quickly swallowed by the roar of the engine and the crashing sound of the waves. Michael watched it all, his face expressionless, until Tiffany fell silent. Tiffany's death was ruled as an accident. The family's influence ensured the truth remained buried at the bottom of the sea forever. Michael was not held legally responsible, but he lived a life more painful than death. He dismissed all the staff, closed down the company, and locked himself in the empty mansion. During the day, he saw Lily and Leo running around the living room, sweetly calling out Daddy. At night, when he closed his eyes, he saw the horrific scene of the children struggling in the waves. Blood dyed the entire sea red. He began driving to Vance before dawn every day. Then walking to his children's tombstones, he knelt from sunrise to sunset. Rain or shine, he no longer dared to intrude, only hoping to be a little closer to them. A week later, I appeared at the cemetery. I wore a simple white dress and carried fresh sunflowers in my hands. I gently placed the flowers before the tombstones, softly speaking to the children, completely ignoring Michael, who was kneeling in the mud not far away. "Lily, Leo, Mommy's here to see you." My voice held a hint of a smile. "Uncle said he's going to invest in and build the best children's hospital in the country, called Lily Leo's Hospital. How does that sound?" Michael heard my words, and his body trembled violently. He finally couldn't hold back, opening his mouth hoarsely. "Grace," I slowly turned my head, my gaze passing over him towards the distant sky. "This air is for my children to breathe, don't waste it." With that, I turned and left. Ethan's car was waiting nearby. He considerately opened the car door for me, shielding my head with his hand. Michael watched in despair as the car carried me away. Just as he was utterly heartbroken, two police cars silently pulled up behind him. A stern-faced officer stepped out of the car, showing his badge and an arrest warrant. "Mr. Michael, we suspect you of falsifying medical records and charges of aggravated assault. Please come with us to assist in the investigation." Michael looked up sharply, his face full of astonishment. "What falsifying medical records?" The officer read coldly. "We received a report from a key witness. The lead surgeon who performed your bone marrow matching surgery has reported from overseas. He testified that Ms. Grace's bone marrow was not compatible with Tiffany's at all. You falsified blood samples, creating a false appearance of bone marrow compatibility." Michael's face instantly turned ashen. He remembered my desperate eyes outside the operating room that day. He remembered me lying weakly in the hospital bed. Yet he forced me to sign the liability waiver. He remembered the humiliation as my trembling hand pressed the red ink print. So, from beginning to end, I had known the truth. Michael was led to the defendant's stand. "This records every expense from our 6 years of marriage, from a single green onion bought at the local market to cheap toys for the children. Every cent is clearly accounted for." I opened the ledger, and the dense handwriting came into view for everyone present. "Mr. Michael claims he spent these 6 years experiencing true love, but I'd like to draw the court's attention to a detail." I looked up, meeting Michael's gaze directly. "The small apartment we rented, the residential complex we lived in, even the supermarkets we frequented, were all within Hayes' real estate portfolio." Michael's face instantly turned pale. His so-called rent was merely moving money from one pocket to the other. This wasn't experiencing life. This was treating me as an experimental subject, a 6-year-long game of human degradation. Murmuring filled the courtroom. The entire court fell into a deathly silence. I presented my final piece of evidence. "This is the audio recording from the speedboat that night." Every word in the recording pierced the heart of everyone present like a sharp blade. The haughty disdain, the disregard for life, and the trampling of my dignity made all defenses appear weak and futile. Desperate tears welled up in Michael's eyes. The judge struck the gavel and announced a recess. I turned and left, Michael's heartbreaking shouts echoing behind me. Michael was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to 15 years prison sentence. I turned to leave the court, and reporters swarmed around me. I put on sunglasses and Ethan protected me. "Ms. Grace, what are your thoughts on the verdict? Will you forgive Michael? What are Van's plans moving forward?" I stopped and took off my sunglasses. "Hayes has officially filed for bankruptcy today, 3 years later." A call from the prison came in. "Ms. Grace, Michael is requesting to see you. He says it's his final wish before death." I held the phone, my fingers trembling slightly. His body had deteriorated, his mind completely broken, diagnosed with multiple illnesses. I hung up the phone and stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, looking in the direction of Vance in the distance. Mai and Leo were buried there. Ethan walked over and gently patted my shoulder. "It's okay if you don't go." I shook my head. It was also time to make final goodbyes to my past. In the heavily guarded visiting room, I saw Michael. He had aged terribly, white-haired, stooped, his loose prison uniform hanging emptily on him. When he saw me, a faint light flickered in his clouded eyes, then immediately dimmed. "Grace, I know it's too late for anything now. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just want to know if you ever loved me." His question was both pathetic and ridiculous. I looked at him silently, took something from my bag, and gently placed it on the glass between us, a faded Polaroid photo. In the photo, 6 years ago, shortly after we met, we were eating casual diner food at a roadside stall. He was wearing a simple t-shirt then, smiling like a big boy. and I was nestled beside him, my eyes full of happiness and longing. I loved him. I pointed to the man in the photo and spoke calmly. I loved the man who would be so nervous he didn't know what to do when I caught a cold. Loved the man who made a mess of the kitchen the first time he cooked for me. Loved the man who, with red-rimmed eyes, held our newborn children and swore to protect us for a lifetime. Tears welled up in Michael's eyes. My gaze shifted from the photo to his now haggard face, my expression cold and distant. But that person died a long time ago. He died without me even knowing. He died when you decided to test me with a deception, when you allowed Tiffany to harm our children, when you threw those 2 silicone dummies into the sea. Michael's body trembled violently. Michael, I looked into his eyes one last time. Tiffany was the one who killed my children. But you were the one who killed my love. I stood up, leaving the photo there, and turned to leave. That photo was the only remaining beautiful memory he had. Now, it would become a permanent brand on his heart. Evidence of how he had destroyed everything with his own hands. Behind me, I heard his stifled, desperate sobs. Stepping out of the prison gates, Ethan waited by the car. Seeing my expression, he asked nothing, simply opening the car door. "Time to go home," he said. The car started, and I watched the prison building recede in the rearview mirror. I suddenly remembered Lily once asking me, "Mommy, why do some people do bad things?" I had stroked her little face then and replied, "Because they've forgotten what love is." Now I understood. Michael had never truly loved me. He only loved the grace he could control, the humble one who needed his charity. 2 years later, I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window in the Vance CEO's office, overlooking the city. In my hand was the recently signed acquisition agreement. Another former competitor was now under my control. The seasoned board member's gaze shifted from initial skepticism to current awe. "Ms. Grace, Mr. Ethan is here," the secretary softly reported. Ethan pushed the door open, a document in his hand. "The site for Lily Leo's hospital has been confirmed. It's on a prime downtown lot." I took the document and flipped through a few pages. Lily Leo's hospital, named after my children. It would be the nation's most advanced children's medical center. "Want to go see it this weekend?" Ethan asked. I nodded. For the past 2 years, Ethan had never left my side, not as a lover, not as a friend, but more like family. He understood every scar in my heart, and he knew when to speak and when to remain silent. Lily Leo's park was bustling on the weekend. This was the children's park I had invested in and built, free for all children. Watching the innocent smiles on the carousel, my mind found a rare peace. Ethan handed me a hot cocoa. "You have a smile on your face now." I gently ran my hand along the railing, my gaze softly fixed on the running children. If and Leo were still here, they would be around this age now. "Ms. Grace, you have mail," the ran over, slightly out of breath, holding an envelope, the prison's official seal. I recognized it. I tore open the envelope. Inside was only a death notification. Michael, deceased from acute heart failure. The doctor's diagnosis stated broken heart syndrome, a form of heart failure caused by extreme grief. I stared at the paper, waiting for any ripple of emotion within me. Nothing. There was nothing. Ethan glanced at the contents of the paper, said nothing, and simply stood quietly beside me. I folded the notification in half, then again, and then released it. The white paper spiraled in the breeze, floating into the distance and eventually disappearing into the crowd.